She knew exactly what she was doing. She lied to me and she lied to this court.
That is enough.
He didn't hesitate. "She's lying," he said, loud, certain. Then the judge ordered the records displayed, the screen lit up, and in seconds, confidence turned into silence. That silence was the loudest sound I've ever heard. It swallowed his arrogance, the smug certainty that had filled this sterile courtroom for weeks. You could hear the sharp intake of breath from the gallery, the soft rustle of my attorney's suit as she straightened, and the frantic, almost mechanical, clicking of a pen from his side of the table. My heart wasn't just pounding. It was a drum of vindication beating against my ribs. This wasn't about winning. This was about survival. About the moment the predator realizes the prey has kept a ledger of every attack. They call this a dissolution of marriage, a civil proceeding. That's a lie. This was a war he started the day he promised to love me. The battlefield just moved from our home to this room. For 3 years, Marcus Sterling, my husband, the celebrated architect with the flawless public smile, systematically convinced everyone, my friends, my family, even me for a while, that I was unstable, a spender, a fantasist. "Ella has a vivid imagination," he'd say with a concerned sigh. He used charm like a scalpel, isolating me stitch by stitch, and when I finally found the strength to leave, he weaponized that narrative. In these preliminary hearings, his lawyer painted a picture. I was a gold-digging hysteric, fabricating claims of financial control and emotional abuse to loot his hard-earned success. My claims of hidden assets, delusion. My fear, theatrics. Marcus would just look at the judge with this pained, patient expression, as if enduring a tantrum. He was so confident in the maze of lies he'd built, but I had spent my quiet years in our gilded cage not just crying, but documenting. I had learned to be a ghost in my own home, listening, nodding, preserving. While he thought I was broken, I was becoming a forensic accountant of my own life. The records they were about to display weren't just my evidence. They were my testimony, screamed not in tears, but in bank codes, timestamps, and digital footprints he never knew I had. The screen flickered to life, casting a pale blue glow on his now frozen face. This was the moment the mirror shattered, and the reflection he'd crafted for the world, for me, would show the cracks. This is my story. Not of a broken marriage, but of a broken vow met with a forged spine. This is how I, Ella Sterling, stopped being a character in his fiction and became the author of my own truth. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. The air in the conference room was cold enough to make the skin on my forearms prickle. It smelled of lemon-scented disinfectant and the faint, acrid tang of desperation. Marcus's lawyer, Robert Thorne, slid a single sheet of paper across the polished mahogany table. It traveled the distance like a declaration of war, which, of course, it was. "This is a more than generous offer, Ella," Thorne said, his voice a smooth baritone designed to sound reasonable. "Given the circumstances." I didn't look at the paper. I looked at Marcus. He sat beside Thorne, the picture of dignified suffering. He'd chosen a charcoal gray suit, the one that brought out the steely flecks in his eyes, and wore the expression he reserved for disappointing subordinates, a blend of pity and profound fatigue. He didn't speak. He let Thorne play the bad cop while he perfected the role of the wounded good man, pushed to his limit by an unreasonable woman. It was a performance I knew by heart. "The circumstances being my alleged emotional fragility?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. I made a point to let my fingers tremble slightly as I finally pulled the paper toward me. The number on it was offensive, a year's worth of what he spent on his car's maintenance. It was a number meant to insult, to show me exactly how little he thought I was worth, and more importantly, to see if I'd break. "The circumstances being a lack of tangible contribution to the marital estate in recent years," Thorne corrected gently, as if explaining basic arithmetic to a child. "Marcus has built Sterling Architects from the ground up. The value is in his name, his vision. The court will see that. This offer," he gestured to the pittance, "avoids a protracted, ugly fight that would only drain resources, emotional resources included." A flashback, unbidden and vivid. Me a decade younger, hair in a messy bun, glasses perched on my nose, surrounded by spreadsheets in our first cramped apartment. Marcus massaging my shoulders. "You're a wizard, Elle. This tax structuring you did for my first independent project, you saved us. You're my secret weapon." The warmth of his hands, the pride in his voice. My contribution then had been tangible enough. That was before the narrative shifted. Started small, a barely perceptible rewrite of our shared history. "You're so scattered lately, sweetheart. Let me handle the AMX bill, it'll be one less thing for you to worry about." Then, "Your old friend Lisa, she's so negative, always dragging you down. I think she's jealous of what we're building." Later, after I'd left my junior partnership at the accounting firm to manage his booming business's books from home, it became, "You were so stressed in that corporate world. This is better for you. Look how much calmer you are." I was calmer because I was being sedated by isolation. My world shrunk to the beautiful, silent confines of our newly built, architecturally awarded home. A glass and steel masterpiece that felt increasingly like a terrarium. I was the exotic, fragile plant inside, slowly wilting under a controlled environment. The crack in the glass came on a Tuesday. Marcus was at a conference in Denver. I was reconciling the business accounts, a task he'd recently begun to double-check with a mumbled excuse about new audit complexities. A transaction caught my eye. A $12,000 quarterly transfer from our joint operating account to an entity named MS Holdings, LLC. I knew every vendor, every subsidiary. I had created most of them. This one was unfamiliar. A cold, professional curiosity, long dormant, flickered inside me. I logged into the online banking portal, my fingers moving with an old, familiar rhythm. I traced the account number. It wasn't linked to any of our standard business logins. Using his desktop, a breach of our unspoken rules, I tried a password I remembered from years ago, a variation of his old license number. The system accepted it. There it was, a standalone money market account opened 3 years prior in his name only. The $12,000 was just the most recent drip. The balance was over $200,000. My breath hitched. This wasn't a mistake. This was a design. That night I asked him about it. I framed it as concern, a possible accounting error. "Honey, I saw this odd transfer to an MS Holdings. Do you know what that is? Could it be a phishing scam?" The transformation was instantaneous. The affectionate husband vanished. His face darkened, his posture rigid. "You were snooping on my computer." The accusation was a slap. I was reconciling, and I saw. "You saw something you clearly don't understand," he snapped, cutting me off. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "God, Ella, it's a liability shield for a new venture. Complicated legal stuff. The very reason I've been handling the more complex finances. You get overwhelmed by details, you always have. Look at you now, you're shaking." I looked down. My hands were, in fact, trembling. But it wasn't from confusion. It was from the white-hot clarity of betrayal. He saw the tremors and his entire demeanor shifted again. The anger melted into profound concern. He crossed the room and took my hands, his grip firm, warm. "Oh, baby, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shout. It's just this project is high stakes and I'm under insane pressure. I should have explained. I was trying to protect you from the stress." He pulled me into a hug, my face against his chest, where I could hear the steady, false beat of his heart. "You have to trust me. You're my wife. I'm building all of this for us." In that moment, suspended in his manipulative embrace, the final piece clicked into place. The forgotten tablet. It was an old device buried in a drawer with obsolete chargers. He wouldn't remember it. It was still logged into his cloud drive, a digital ghost. That night, while he slept the untroubled sleep of the righteous, I began. I became a ghost in my own home. I listened. I noted the times he disparaged my memory to friends. "Ella's mind is like a sieve these days, bless her." I recorded his calm, corrective voice on my phone when he explained why my recollection of a conversation was impossible. I used the tablet to access the hidden folders in his cloud, downloading statements, transfer confirmations, emails with his lawyer that discussed protecting assets dated from before I'd even mentioned leaving my job. The Sterling Ledger was born, not on paper, but in a heavily encrypted offshore cloud account of my own. It was a mirror I held up to his secret life. Every hidden transfer, every covert payment, every lie told with a smile was meticulously logged, cross-referenced, and sourced. While he thought he was managing a dimming light, I was quietly, methodically building a lighthouse. The final discovery was the condo, not through a careless statement, but through a property tax portal I'd gained access to by piecing together information from his emails. A sleek, downtown 2-bedroom, purchased 18 months ago under an LLC that traced back to a law firm, which in turn was paid from the secret MS Holdings account. The date of purchase coincided with a boys' weekend in Vegas. The condo wasn't just a hidden asset, it was a hidden life. That was the day I stopped collecting evidence and started planning my exit. The woman who had allowed herself to be painted as fragile, scattered, and unreliable had vanished. In her place was the forensic accountant, cool, precise, and strategically patient. I contacted Amanda Chen, a litigator known for her razor-sharp mind and disdain for bullies. Our first meeting in a discreet coffee shop, I handed her not tears, but a summarized digital dossier. She scanned it, her eyes widening slightly behind her stylish frames. She looked from the screen to my calm, expectant face. "He has no idea what's coming, does he?" she asked, a slow smile spreading. I shook my head. None. Now, in the frigid conference room, I pushed the insulting settlement offer back across the table. The trembling in my hands was gone. I looked directly at Marcus, bypassing Thorne entirely. "No," I said. The word was quiet but absolute. It hung in the chemically clean air. Marcus's mask of patience slipped for a microsecond. A flicker of surprise, then irritation. He leaned forward. "Ella, be reasonable. This isn't the time for pride. Think of the emotional toll. The court process, it's brutal. On everyone." He was still speaking to the woman he'd constructed, the one who couldn't handle brutality. I stood up, gathering my bag, a sensible, expensive leather tote he'd bought me to replace my tattered old work bag. Amanda stood beside me, a silent pillar of support. "I've done my thinking, Marcus," I said, my voice now clear, carrying the quiet authority I'd buried for years. "See you in court." I turned and walked out, feeling the heat of his stare on my back. It wasn't anger I felt walking down the sterile hallway, but the profound, steadying silence of a chess player who has just seen the entire board and knows, with crystalline certainty, how the game will end. The war was declared, and for the first time, I was the one holding the blueprint. The cavernous silence of the courtroom was a living thing, thick and heavy, broken only by the soft shuffle of papers and the distant hum of the ventilation system. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded neatly on the cool wooden surface, feeling the ghost of their former tremor entirely absent. To my left, Amanda Chen adjusted a cufflink, her posture radiating a predatory calm. Across the divide, Marcus sat with Robert Thorne. He looked like a magazine spread entitled The Unjustly Accused. His suit was a somber navy, his tie perfectly knotted, his expression one of weary, dignified resolve. He caught my eye for a moment and offered the faintest, saddest shake of his head, as if to say, "Look what you've made us do." I looked away, my gaze settling on the judge, a sharp-eyed woman with a no-nonsense gray bob named Judge Wilkins. "Mr. Thorne, your opening statement," the judge said, her voice dry as parchment. Thorne rose, a lion preparing to address the pride. He painted a masterpiece. His Marcus was a visionary, an artist who had poured his soul, his sweat, and his singular genius into building sterling architects from a drafting table in a spare bedroom into a city-defining firm. He spoke of long nights, crushing deadlines, the immense pressure of creation. And then he spoke of me, not as a partner but as a dependent. A fragile, loving soul who had struggled to keep pace with the demanding world he inhabited. "Out of love," Thorne intoned, packing slowly before the jury box, though there was no jury, just the judge's keen attention. "My client encouraged his wife to step back from the stresses of her own career. He created a beautiful, serene home for her, a sanctuary. He took on the burden of their complex finances because he saw how it agitated her. He protected her." The words were velvet wraps around iron bars. Every act of control was reframed as an act of chivalry. The isolation was creating a peaceful home. The financial domination was shielding her from stress. The narrative was so familiar it made my bones ache. It was the story he'd been telling and selling for years. "He did everything a loving husband could do," Thorne continued, his voice dropping to a confidential register. "But sadly, Mrs. Sterling's internal challenges persisted. She became prone to fantasies, to suspicions with no basis in reality. She began to imagine hidden assets, secret lives. The strain on Mr. Sterling, trying to manage his burgeoning enterprise while caring for a wife in the grip of such paranoia, became immense. He then presented the first evidence, a series of credit card statements, printed on heavy stock. He handed copies to the judge, to Amanda, and placed one in front of me. Your Honor, these statements from the joint American Express account, which Mr. Sterling generously maintained, show a pattern of erratic and excessive spending by Mrs. Sterling during the period she claims she was being financially controlled. Thousands on luxury retail, spa treatments, boutique hotels. I glanced at the sheet. It was a clever forgery by omission. The charges were real, but they were carefully curated. My actual purchases, the groceries, the pharmacy runs, the mundane necessities, were missing. The listed charges were all his, or were from trips I'd taken with him where he'd insisted on using the card for points. It was a snapshot designed to show a frivolous woman living large on her husband's dime. Marcus took the stand. He was magnificent. His voice was measured, tinged with a heartbreak that seemed utterly genuine. He answered Thorne's softball questions with humility, taking full responsibility for perhaps sheltering Ella too much, admitting that maybe his protectiveness had been misinterpreted. He spoke of his fear for my mental state, his attempts to get me to seek help. I angrily refused. He was constructing the cage around me right here in open court, with the judge as a witness. When Amanda rose for cross-examination, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Thorne looked vaguely amused, as if watching a kitten try to stalk a wolf. Mr. Sterling, Amanda began, her voice friendly, almost conversational. You described your wife as financially unsophisticated, easily overwhelmed. Is that correct? Yes, that's fair to say, Marcus said, leaning into the microphone with a sigh. She's a wonderful, creative person, but the details of high finance, they caused her real anxiety. Creative? Amanda asked, tilting her head. Her degree is in forensic accounting, summa cum laude from Stern. Is that a creative field? Marcus blinked. Well, it's analytical, of course, but that was a long time ago, the pressures of the real world. Of course, Amanda nodded, as if agreeing. When she left her partnership at Dalton and Reed to manage the books for your then-fledgling firm, was that her idea or yours? It was mutual, he said smoothly. She wanted to support my dream. Did you ever tell her that her work on your early business plans, the tax structuring, the investor projections, was saving you? That she was your secret weapon? A faint flush crept up his neck. He hadn't expected this dive into ancient, affectionate history. I may have said something like that, in encouragement. So, at one point, her financial acumen was not a source of anxiety, but of salvation for your business. Thorne stood, objection argumentative. Sustained, Judge Wilkins said, but her eyes were on Marcus. Amanda shifted gears. She had him confirm the existence of the joint American Express account. She had him confirm that he was the primary manager of their finances in the later years. She lulled him into a rhythm of agreeing with basic facts, building a scaffold of his own testimony. Then she approached the evidence table and picked up the credit card statement Thorne had entered. Mr. Sterling, you've stated these charges reflect my client's irresponsible personal spending. Yes. Yes, that's correct. Could you point to, say, 3 charges on this statement that you are certain, beyond any doubt, were made by Mrs. Sterling for her personal use? Marcus hesitated, then leaned forward, pointing. This one, a purchase at Neiman Marcus, that's her favorite store, this spa charge at the Oasis, and this hotel charge in Sonoma, a girl's trip she took. Amanda nodded slowly. You're certain? Absolutely. She placed the paper down. Your Honor, I have no further questions for Mr. Sterling on this point at this time. The dismissal in her tone was subtle but clear. She was done with him for now. Marcus stepped down, returning to his seat with a slightly puzzled confidence. He'd expected a brutal assault, not this gentle probing. He mistakenly read it as weakness. Then it was my turn. Amanda guided me through my testimony with a gentle hand. I spoke of the slow constriction of my world. I used his language carefully. I felt protected at first, then I just felt confused. I admitted to not having passwords, to being told not to worry about certain accounts. I played the part of the hapless wife, just coherent enough to be credible, just vague enough to seem like the unstable portrait they'd painted. I saw Marcus and Thorne exchanging glances. They were buying it. They thought I was floundering. Then Robert Thorne approached for cross-examination. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. His entire strategy was to shatter my credibility, to make the judge see me as the hysterical fabulist Marcus had described. He started politely, then quickly turned surgical. He fired questions about dates, amounts, bank account numbers. He'd ask me to recall a specific conversation from 2 years prior, then pounce when my memory, genuinely fuzzy on the exact date, wavered. So you can't remember the date, but you're certain the content of the conversation was as you described? He'd press, his voice dripping with skepticism. He held up documents, a mortgage statement, an investment portfolio summary. Have you ever seen this before, Mrs. Sterling? I would squint, hesitate. I don't think so. It looks familiar, but you testified moments ago that Mr. Sterling hid all such documents from you. Now you're saying it looks familiar. Which is it? I'm not sure. I let my voice waver. I looked down at my hands, willing a slight tremble back into them. It came, a faint vibration of performance art. Thorne was building momentum, a wave of contradiction and implied falsehood. He was boxing me in, using my coached vagueness against me. Finally, he seized the credit card statement again, the centerpiece of his case against my character. Mrs. Sterling, you heard your husband's testimony. He identified 3 specific charges on this statement as your personal, frivolous spending. Do you deny making these charges? I looked at the paper, then at him, my eyes wide. I don't shop at Neiman Marcus often, and the spa. I think that was a gift he bought for me. The hotel. I went with friends, but I thought he paid for that separately. My answer was deliberately muddy, a perfect portrait of confused unreliability. Thorne couldn't contain his triumph. He turned to the judge, holding the paper aloft. Your Honor, this is emblematic of the entire case. Vague accusations, no grasp of detail, a constantly shifting story. My client has been subjected to. He was interrupted, not by Amanda, but by Marcus. It was a low, clear murmur, meant to be heard, a stage whisper of profound exasperation. She's lying. The words cut through the air, loud, certain. They hung there, the ultimate accusation, the summation of his entire worldview. Judge Wilkins' head snapped toward him. Mr. Sterling, you will not comment from counsel table. He had the decency to look chastened. My apologies, Your Honor, it's just frustrating to see the performance. Amanda Chen was on her feet before the echo of his words had faded. Your Honor, opposing counsel has just engaged in a blatant attempt to intimidate the witness and poison the well. He has directly called my client a liar in open court, based on his own self-serving testimony. I moved to strike his comment. Noted, Ms. Chen, the judge said, her lips a thin line. She was not pleased with Marcus's outburst. But Amanda wasn't finished. Her eyes were like flint. Furthermore, to directly refute this specific and damaging accusation, and to clarify this emblematic evidence once and for all, I request permission to present demonstrative evidence. We would like to display the original, unredacted credit card records, along with accompanying documentation, on the courtroom screen. Thorne scoffed. Your Honor, this is a theatrical diversion. The document is what it is. The document is a curated fragment, Your Honor, Amanda countered, her voice icy. We wish to show the whole story. Judge Wilkins looked from Amanda's fierce gaze to Thorne's smug confidence, and finally to Marcus, who now looked less sure, a faint crease between his brows. Approach, she said. A hushed conference at the bench. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Thorne's gestures, dismissive, confident. I saw Amanda, speaking with sharp, precise movements of her hands. The judge listened, then nodded once. Permission granted. Set it up. A screen descended with a soft whir behind the witness stand. A court clerk wheeled out a laptop and a projector. The room seemed to lean in, the very air contracting. The click of the keyboard was unnaturally loud. Marcus stared straight ahead, but I saw the muscle in his jaw begin to tick. Thorne was reviewing his notes, pretending nonchalance. The projector flickered on, casting a square of white light. The screen lit up. Amanda's voice was calm, clear, and deadly in the silent room. Let's start with Exhibit 12, the American Express statement for the period in question. But let's see the full statement, as provided by the issuer, not the partial printout entered by Mr. Thorne. The first document appeared. It was identical to Thorne's sheet, but longer, much longer, rows and rows of data. And in seconds, confidence turned into silence. The sterile white light of the projector illuminated the dust motes dancing in the heavy air. On the screen, the credit card statement was a stark grid of data. Amanda used a laser pointer, its tiny red dot a burning pinprick of truth. Your Honor, if we can direct attention to the charges Mr. Sterling so confidently identified, Amanda said, her voice devoid of any theatrics. It was the tone of a professor presenting an irrefutable proof. The red dot hovered over the $847.50 charge at Neiman Marcus. With a click from the clerk's laptop, a new window popped up beside it, a digital copy of the itemized receipt pulled from the store's archival system via a subpoena. The purchase was not for women's clothing or accessories. It was for a single item, a Brioni leather briefcase. Men's, style, number, color, and a note, gift wrap requested. Initials MS. A soft, collective inhalation came from the gallery. Now, Amanda continued, the red dot sliding down to the $350 charge for the Oasis Spa. Another click. An internal email from the spa manager produced under Discovery appeared. The subject line, confirmed appointment for Mr. Sterling. The body, per your request, we have scheduled the deep tissue sports massage for Marcus Sterling for 3 p.m. following his golf tournament. The champagne amenity for 2 will be in the couple's suite. The date matched the charge. Marcus had gone perfectly still. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was staring at the grain of the wooden table before him, as if he could divine an escape route in its patterns. And finally, Amanda said, her pointer finding the $1,200 hotel charge in Sonoma. The accompanying document that appeared was a booking confirmation. The guest name was indeed mine, but next to it was a bank statement, *the hidden MS Holdings account statement, showing a transfer of $1,200 from that secret account to our joint checking account on the same day. A memo line read, reimburse Sonoma trip. It would appear, Amanda said, letting the words settle, that the only girls' trip taken was funded by an account my client had no knowledge of or access to, and that these emblematic charges of frivolity were, in fact, his personal luxuries and a reimbursed expense. This isn't a case of faulty memory. This is a case of deliberate misrepresentation. Robert Thorne was on his feet, his face flushed. Your Honor, this is a fishing expedition. The origin of the funds for a hotel stay is irrelevant to the charge itself. It is entirely relevant to the credibility of the witness who introduced it as evidence of her spending. Judge Wilkins snapped, her eyes never leaving the screen. Proceed, Ms. Chen. Amanda didn't smile. She simply moved to the next pillar of their narrative. The defense has asserted that my client was cut off from financial information due to her own anxiety, that Mr. Sterling handled things to protect her. Let's examine that. The screen changed. It showed a series of login records for their primary investment portal. These server logs obtained from the financial institution show user activity. The username eSterling, a red circle appeared around it, was active and regularly accessing the accounts until she clicked, and a red X appeared over a date stamp 18 months prior. This date. After this, no logins from her credentials. Thorne tried to recover. She forgot her password, a common occurrence as we've established. Indeed, Amanda said. Let's see what happened on that date. A new document appeared, an email from Marcus to the investment firm's customer service. Please revoke authorized user access for Ella Sterling on all accounts due to security concerns. All communications should come solely to me. The timestamp was 9:05 a.m. The server log showed my last attempted login at 9:15 a.m., resulting in an invalid credentials error. Security concerns he never discussed with her, Amanda noted. Next to the email, she displayed another record. The automated alert email the investment firm stated it sent to both parties on the account whenever such a change was made. That email was found in Marcus's archive folder. It was found in my spam folder. A folder rule, another subpoenaed email revealed, that had been set up by Marcus's desktop computer a week prior, filtering any email from financial institutions directly to spam. The control was no longer implied. It was diagrammed, time-stamped, and laid bare. It wasn't protection. It was a digital lock on a door I didn't even know had been closed. Marcus had lifted his head. The dignified weariness was gone, replaced by a pale, waxen shock. He kept looking at Thorne, as if waiting for his lawyer to press a button that would make this stop. Thorne was frantically scribbling notes, his earlier smugness evaporated. Now to the core of my client's claim, the deliberate concealment of marital assets. Amanda's voice took on a sharper edge. The screen now displayed a flowchart, clean and professional, the kind I used to make for his investor presentations. At the top, Joint Operating Account Sterling Architects. An arrow led down to MS Holdings LLC. From there, arrows fanned out to several entities, a consulting firm, a licensing shell, and finally to a property title. This is the financial trail, Amanda said. Quarterly transfers from the marital business account, which my client did help build and manage, into a sole proprietorship he controlled. From there, funds were shuffled to obscure ultimate ownership of this. She clicked. A photograph filled the screen, a sleek, modern condominium in the vibrant downtown Loft district. The building was recognizable, coveted. The purchase agreement appeared next to it, the buyer listed as Horizon View Properties, LLC. A property purchased 18 months ago, titled to an anonymous shell corporation, Amanda stated. Thorne found his voice, desperate. Your Honor, Mr. Sterling has explained this. It's a liability-holding vehicle for a potential future commercial project, a place to entertain clients. A residential condo with a sub-zero fridge and a soaking tub is an odd choice for commercial client entertainment, Judge Wilkins observed dryly, peering over her glasses. Do go on, Ms. Chen. Mando obliged. We were curious about the true beneficial owner of Horizon View Properties. A click. The articles of organization for Horizon View, listing a law firm as the registered agent. Another click. A retainer agreement between that law firm and Marcus Sterling. Another. A bank statement from MS Holdings showing a retainer payment to that firm. And finally, the kill shot. A scanned check from MS Holdings made out to the county property tax office for the condo's annual taxes. In the memo line, Unit 12B. The chain was complete, unbreakable. The hidden account funded the hidden LLC that owned the hidden condo. It wasn't a future project. It was a present, fully furnished reality. The silence in the room was now absolute, pressurized. You could have heard a heart break. Then Amanda did something unexpected. Your Honor, the defense has repeatedly suggested my client's perceptions are unreliable, the product of an anxious or paranoid mind. We would like to play one exhibit to provide context for her state of mind. Before Thorne could object, the screen changed to an audio waveform. A date displayed, October 12 of the previous year. Amanda hit play. My own voice, strained, filled the room. Marcus, I saw the statement for the Aspen trip. It was $8,000. You told me you got it comped through a client. A pause, then his voice, calm, warm, reasonable, the very voice he'd used in this courtroom minutes ago. Ella, my love, we've been over this. That was the deposit for the client retreat we hosted. It was refunded to the business account the next week. Don't you remember? I showed you the reconciliation. You didn't show me. I never saw that. You're upset. Your memory gets fuzzy when you're upset. This is exactly why I handle these things, to spare you this stress. Come here. The sound of rustling, a muffled sob. SHHH, it's okay. I've got it. You don't have to worry. The clip ended. It wasn't a screaming fight. It was something infinitely worse, a clinical demonstration of gaslighting. The calm, loving erasure of reality. The reasonableness of it made a chill skitter down every spine in the room. In that horrific silence, I finally moved. I turned my head and looked directly at Marcus. All the fear, the performative confusion, was gone from my face. What was left was a clean, cold clarity. When I spoke, my voice didn't carry the tremor of the wounded wife. It carried the quiet, final tone of a judge delivering a verdict. "You were right, Marcus." The sound seemed to startle him. His eyes, wide and glazed, jerked to mine. "One of us was keeping meticulous records. You just assumed it was you." It was the first time I had directly addressed him since this began. The words weren't shouted. They were simply stated, and they fell into the quiet like stones into a deep well, each one sinking with a terrible finality. His mask didn't just crack, it disintegrated. The shock morphed into a raw, undiluted hatred, a flash of pure, venomous truth before his lawyer's hand gripped his arm under the table, forcing his gaze down. His chest heaved once, a silent, ragged thing. Judge Wilkins looked from the frozen image on the screen, the financial flowchart of his deceit, to Marcus's bowed head, to my composed face. The air in the courtroom was electric with the aftermath of the explosion. "Counsel," the judge said, her voice cutting through the static, "I think this is an appropriate time for a recess. We will reconvene at 2 p.m. She brought her gavel down. The sharp crack was a period at the end of his sentence. Chaos erupted in a muted, professional way. Thorne immediately huddled with Marcus, speaking in a fierce, low whisper. Marcus wasn't listening. He was staring blankly at the now-dark screen, as if he could rewind the last 20 minutes. Reporters in the gallery scrambled for the door, phones already at their ears. Amanda placed a steadying hand on my shoulder, a silent signal of triumph, but her face was all business. As I stood, gathering my notepad, my own real one, not a prop, I felt no surge of elation. Instead, I felt a profound and settling quiet. The invisible beast of his narrative, the one that had lived in my home and whispered in my ear for years, had just been led into the bright light of this room and shown to be made of paper and lies. It was dissolving before everyone's eyes. I walked out, not looking back, feeling the weight of his shattered gaze on my back, a physical pressure that finally, after all this time, had no power to bend me. The marble corridor outside the courtroom was a cacophony of hushed, frantic energy. The heavy oak door had barely sighed shut behind me before the world fractured into a dozen competing realities. A junior reporter from the business section, her phone held like a talisman, tried to step into my path. "Mrs. Sterling, a comment on the hidden assets." Amanda's hand was a firm barrier, her voice a blade. "No comment." She steered me past the scrum, toward a secured witness room she'd had the foresight to reserve. Inside, the silence was sudden and profound. The room was small, windowless, furnished only with a table and 4 chairs. It smelled of dust and old coffee. Amanda closed the door, shutting out the noise, and for a moment we just stood there. Then she let out a breath that was almost a laugh, but one tempered by steel. "Well, that went according to plan." I sank into a chair, the adrenaline beginning to drain, leaving my limbs feeling both heavy and weightless. The steady calm I'd projected on the stand was real, but it was a disciplined focus, a laser beam. Now, in the dim quiet, the aftershocks began to tremble through me, not of fear, but of seismic release. "He didn't see it coming," I said, my voice sounding far away in my own ears. "Of course he didn't," Amanda said, placing her briefcase on the table with a solid thump. "Narcissists never do, they believe their own fiction too completely." She pulled out her own tablet, her fingers already flying across the screen. "The judge is furious, not at us, at the blatant attempt to subvert the proceedings. Thorne's credibility is in the gutter, Marcus's, well, she didn't need to finish. His credibility was ash." My phone, silenced in my bag, began to vibrate with an insistent, angry hum. I pulled it out. The screen was a cascade of notifications, text messages. "From my sister, Lee. Oh my God, ELLA. I just heard from Mom. What is happening? Call me." From an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Just saw the news alert about the trial. "Thinking of you. So sorry you're going through this." From a number I didn't recognize. "Saw you on You Go Girl. Nail the bastard." And then the voicemail indicator blinked. A preview showed a snippet from my mother. "Honey, the neighbors are asking, what on earth?" Marcus's mother called me in tears. She said, "You're destroying him with lies." I put the phone face down on the table. The narrative had been public for so long, the stable, brilliant Marcus and his delicate wife. Now, the counter-narrative was exploding into the ecosystem of our shared lives, and the shrapnel was flying everywhere. I felt a pang, not for Marcus, but for the innocent bystanders caught in the blast, the ones who had bought his story because it was the only one he'd ever let them see. Amanda's phone buzzed with a different tone, an internal line. She answered, listened, her expression turning grimly satisfied. "He's firing Thorne, effective immediately. Panic move." She hung up. "His new lawyer is Linda Croft. She's a shark, a different kind. Less bluster, more settlement. She'll try to stop the bleeding." As if on cue, my phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't a number. It was a text from Marcus's phone. The message was a masterpiece of dissonance, a glimpse into the crumbling fortress of his mind. "Ella, we need to talk, not with lawyers, just us. You've made your point. This is getting out of hand. We can fix this privately, for old time's sake. M." I showed it to Amanda. She snorted. "For old time's sake." The arrogance. He's not offering a truce. He's offering you a chance to surrender after he's already lost the battle. She tapped the screen. "Do not respond. Any communication goes through me now. He's trying to find a seam, a way back into your head. Don't give him an inch." I didn't want to respond. The man who wrote that text was a stranger, a desperate actor trying to remember his lines from a canceled play. The Marcus I'd loved had been another one of his constructs. The 2-hour recess felt both endless and instantaneous. Amanda used the time to strategize. Croft would likely move for a private settlement conference immediately to get the case away from Judge Wilkins' displeased gaze. "Our leverage is absolute," Amanda said, "but we need to decide what we want. Do we press for a full forensic examination of every business entity, which will take months and bleed him dry in legal fees, or do we demand a global settlement now, one that reflects not just the hidden assets, but punitive damages for his conduct?" It was the question I'd been waiting for. The professional in me wanted the forensic dig. I wanted to peel back every layer of every shell company, to follow every dollar he'd ever diverted. The woman who had lived in the terrarium, however, wanted one thing: to be free. To never have to sit in a room with him again, to never have to hear his voice, to never have to perform my pain or my strength for an audience. Before I could answer, Amanda's associate knocked and entered, her eyes wide. "We got it," she said, handing Amanda a fresh stack of printouts. "What?" I asked. Amanda scanned the top page, a slow, hard smile spreading across her face. "While you were on the stand dismantling his finances, our investigator was at the county recorder. We followed the money from the secret account to the secret condo, but we also subpoenaed the condo association's visitor logs and any utility accounts not in the LLC's name." She slid a paper toward me. It was a utility bill for Unit 12B for internet service. The billing name wasn't Horizon View Properties. It was a person, A. Dawson. The service start date was 2 weeks after the condo's purchase. "Who is A. Dawson?" I asked, though a cold knot was already forming in my stomach. The next page was a driver's license photocopy. A woman, late 20s, smiling brightly. Audrey Dawson. The page after that was a LinkedIn profile. Audrey Dawson, Associate Architect, Sterling Architects, hired 2 years ago. The final page was the clincher. A series of time-stamped key fob entries for the condo building's secure parking garage. The fob was registered to Horizon View. The logs showed a pattern: weekday evenings, overnight on Fridays, all-day Sundays. And on many of those weekdays, the fob entry was preceded or followed by a vehicle registration scan for a Mini Cooper registered to Audrey Dawson. The hidden life had a face, a name, and a career he'd likely launched. The cold knot melted, replaced by a hollow, echoing calm. It wasn't jealousy. It was the final, definitive proof of the fiction. Our marriage, in its later years, hadn't been a struggling partnership. It had been the backdrop for his other, more vibrant life. The condo wasn't just a hidden asset. It was the set for his other performance. Amanda watched me carefully. "This changes the settlement calculus again. This isn't just financial concealment. This is evidence of dissipation of marital assets for the benefit of a paramour. Judge Wilkins could award you a disproportionate share, even punitive damages on this alone. We can destroy him." I stared at the smiling, innocent face of Audrey Dawson, another person living in a story he'd written. Was she a villain or just another character under his direction? The choice crystallized. Destroying him would be a full-time job. It would tether me to him for years through appeals, through the venomous aftermath. It would mean my victory would always be defined by his destruction. I didn't want to be the architect of his ruin. I wanted to be the architect of my own peace. "I don't want to destroy him," I said, my voice firm in the small room. "I want to be done. I want the house, clear title. I want a cash settlement equivalent to 60% of the total marital assets, including the full appraised value of that condo. I want the remaining 40% of the business to be bought out, with a valuation from my chosen forensic accountant. And I want it wrapped up in 30 days. Amanda raised an eyebrow, impressed. It was an aggressive, flawless deal. It wasn't about revenge, it was about restitution and a clean, swift exit. "He'll scream. Croft will fight the valuation." "Let her, but show her this," I said, touching the picture of Audrey Dawson. "And tell her we will not only enter it into the public record, but we will subpoena Ms. Dawson to testify about the nature of her client entertainment at the property. Then ask her if she thinks her client's reputation in this town, which is his entire currency, can survive that." It was the one threat that mattered. His image, his sterling reputation, was the final thing he had left. I was offering him a choice, a private, financial annihilation or a public, humiliating one. The afternoon session was a formality. Linda Croft, a sharp-eyed woman with a steely composure, requested and was granted a private settlement conference. In the judge's chambers, the atmosphere was tense. Croft tried to argue for a reasonable split, given Marcus's primary role as breadwinner. Amanda simply slid a single sheet across the table, a summary of the condo, the fob logs, and Audrey Dawson's employment file. Croft's face tightened. She looked at Marcus, who was staring at the floor, his earlier fury now collapsed into a shamed, vacant exhaustion. He looked old. "I see," Croft said quietly. She conferred with him in hissed whispers. He nodded once, a limp, defeated gesture. We reconvened in the courtroom, only to state that the parties had reached a settlement in principle and requested a continuance to finalize details. Judge Wilkins, with a look that conveyed she knew exactly what had transpired, granted it. As we left the courthouse for the final time that day, the evening air was cool. The scrum of reporters had grown. Cameras flashed. Amanda spoke a brief, polished statement about being pleased to have reached a fair resolution for her client. I walked through the gauntlet, saying nothing. I saw Marcus being ushered out a side entrance by Croft, his collar turned up, his face averted from the lenses. 2 parallel exits, 2 divergent futures. In the back of the town car Amanda had ordered, the city lights began to blur past. The hollow feeling was still there, but it was filling with a new substance. Possibility. It was over, not with a bang of total destruction, but with the decisive, quiet click of a lock finally turning. He had tried to write my ending. Now the rest of the page was blank, and the pen, for the first time in a very long time, was firmly in my hand. The final hearing was an administrative whisper after the thunderous drama that had come before. The same courtroom felt different, smaller, quieter, its power to intimidate utterly spent. Judge Wilkins sat on the bench, her demeanor that of a librarian stamping a returned book. There was no gallery of reporters today. The story had flared and faded in the news cycle, replaced by fresher scandals. Only the essential players remained, and the air held the flat, spent quality of a finished thing. Linda Croft stood and recited the terms of the marital settlement agreement into the record. Her voice was a monotone of legal efficiency, but each clause was a monument to my victory. The transfer of the marital residence, free and clear to me. A cash equalization payment of a sum that would make me financially independent for life, derived from a valuation of sterling architects that included the phantom value of the downtown condo, which Marcus was ordered to liquidate. The buyout of my community property interest in the business itself. A clause forbidding either party from making derogatory public statements. It was comprehensive, brutal in its fairness, and legally unassailable. "Does the petitioner understand and agree to these terms?" Judge Wilkins asked, her eyes on me. "Yes, Your Honor." My voice was clear, calm. It echoed slightly in the near-empty room. "Does the respondent understand and agree?" Marcus, "Yes," was a dry rasp, a single syllable scraped from the bottom of a well. He did not look at me. He sat beside Croft, a reduced figure. The exquisite tailoring of his suit couldn't hide the hollows that had appeared in his cheeks, the gray pallor that had seeped into his skin. He wasn't defeated with rage anymore, he was simply empty. The narrative that had sustained him, the brilliant provider, the misunderstood husband, had been publicly deconstructed, and without it, he seemed insubstantial, a blueprint without a building. Judge Wilkins stamped the order. The soft thud of the seal was the only sound. "So ordered. This dissolution is final. Good luck to you both." And that was it. No further commentary, no final lessons. The machinery of justice had processed our conflict and spat out a result. We stood. Amanda gave my arm a slight, triumphant squeeze. Croft was already packing her briefcase, speaking to Marcus in low, hurried tones, likely about the logistics of the first payment. He nodded, still not looking up. I walked out of the courtroom, through the now familiar marble hallways, and pushed through the heavy brass doors into the blunt light of a midday sun. The world outside was ordinary, oblivious. Cars honked, people hurried to lunch, pigeons squabbled over a discarded bagel. The surreal bubble of the trial had popped, and I was deposited back into reality, but a reality forever altered. The first weeks in the house, my house, were spent in a quiet fury of reclamation. I didn't hire a designer. I hired a dumpster. I filled it with the cold, modern furniture he had chosen, the austere art that felt like a hotel lobby. I painted over the slate gray walls with warm, creamy hues. I replaced the industrial lighting with soft lamps. I tore out the minimalist landscaping and planted a chaotic, joyful tangle of lavender and rosemary and climbing roses. The physical act of erasing his aesthetic was profoundly therapeutic. With every load hauled away, every brushstroke of a new color, I was rewriting the space, making it a container for a life he had never known and would never dictate. The money arrived, as per the order, in a series of breathtaking wire transfers. I met with a financial advisor I chose myself, a no-nonsense woman who asked me about my goals, not someone else's risk tolerance. We built a portfolio that was conservative, solid, and generated more than enough passive income. The fear of financial vulnerability, the ghost he had used to haunt me, was exorcised with spreadsheets and bond yields. One afternoon, a courier delivered a flat, square package. Inside, without a note, was a small, exquisite drafting table made of reclaimed oak. It was from Amanda. The card simply read, "For your next blueprint." I set it up in the sunniest corner of the living room, now my office, overlooking the riot of my new garden. On its smooth surface, I didn't place architectural plans. I placed a fresh notebook and my laptop. The sterling ledger, that encrypted file of evidence and pain, was archived, a relic of a closed campaign. I opened a new document. The idea had been forming since the settlement, a quiet conviction growing in the space where my anger had been. My story wasn't unique. What was unique was my skill set to see it coming, and even I had almost missed it. How many others were in the early chapters of my same story, seeing the odd transaction, hearing the gentle corrections, feeling the slow shrink of their world, but lacking the tools to name it, much less prove it. I began to sketch the framework for a consultancy. Not a legal service, not therapy, but a forensic flashlight. I would call it Verita's Financial Clarity. It would be a discreet service for individuals, primarily but not exclusively women, who felt something was off in their financial partnership. I would teach them how to read the story their bank statements were really telling. How to identify the early warning signs of coercive control masked as protectiveness. How to secretly, securely, gather the information they might need, should they ever need it. Empowerment through education. Armor made of knowledge. I reached out to a few former colleagues, the sharp-minded women from my old firm who had watched my career vanish with polite confusion. To my surprise, they were not just interested, they were enthusiastic. One, a whiz with digital forensics, agreed to consult. Another, now a family law attorney, offered to be a referral partner. The skeleton of a network began to form. 6 weeks after the final hearing, I met Amanda for lunch. It was at a bustling, noisy bistro, a place utterly devoid of the hushed, lemon-scented tension of our previous meetings. We talked about everything except the trial, books, travel, the horrifying cost of real estate. As the coffee arrived, she finally broached it. "I heard through the grapevine he sold the condo," she said, stirring a packet of sugar into her cup. "Took a loss on it, and he's being encouraged by the board to take a sabbatical from Sterling Architects. Something about reputational risk affecting client confidence." I felt nothing. No schadenfreude, no pity. It was a news bulletin about a distant country. "And the other person?" I asked, more out of narrative completeness than curiosity. "Transferred to the Chicago office. A great opportunity." Amanda's smile was wry. "He cleans up his messes efficiently, I'll give him that, just not efficiently enough." She then slid a business card across the table. It was for her firm, but she'd written a name and number on the back. "This is our managing partner. We've been looking to deepen our in-house capacity for the financial investigation side of our family law practice. Tracing hidden assets, auditing disclosures. It's lucrative and impactful work. We want to build a dedicated unit." She looked at me, her gaze direct. "We want you to come on board to design it and run it. Part-time, full-time, consultant, you name it. You have a unique skill set, Ella. You've seen it from both sides of the ledger." The offer hung in the air between us, as substantial as the drafting table now sitting in my sunlit room. It was a return to the professional world on my own terms, with my experience, all of it valued as expertise, not a liability. It was an acknowledgement that the woman who had emerged from the trial was not just a survivor, but an asset. "I'm flattered," I said, and I truly was. "And I'm interested, but I've also started something on my own." I told her about Veritas, about the idea of preventative empowerment. Amanda didn't look disappointed. She looked intrigued. "Then let's talk about a different structure, a partnership. My firm refers clients who need the deep dive, the litigation support. You handle that and you run your public-facing consultancy. We share resources." It was a better offer. A collaboration, not an absorption. We spent the rest of the lunch sketching the partnership on a paper napkin, the ink blurring slightly from condensation from our glasses. It felt like the truest, most solid thing I'd built in years. That evening, back at my drafting table, I finished the basic website copy for Veritas Financial Clarity. The tagline read, "Your financial life has a story. Let's make sure you're the author." I saved the draft and leaned back in my chair. The silence of the house was no longer oppressive. It was peaceful. It was mine. Outside, the first stars were pricking through the twilight. I thought of the woman I had been a year ago, trembling in a conference room, pretending to be weaker than I was. I thought of the cool, focused witness on the stand and the hollow, resolved figure listening to the final decree. The most important record I ever kept wasn't of what he took from me. It was the proof of what I always had. Myself. Not the fragile self he had mirrored back to me, but the core, resilient, brilliant self that could read a spreadsheet, spot a lie, and build a new life from the rubble of an old one. The ledger was closed. The new blueprint, still unfurling on my table, was for a future designed by me, down to the last, perfect detail.